Welcome to the Fatigue Files, a podcast that explores fatigue conditions from as many angles as possible while pushing the boundaries of thinking about fatigue as a signal to the 21st century and beyond. Cutting-edge thinking, practical strategies, thought-provoking explorations. They're going to all be here, and I'm your host, Anna Greer, welcoming you to this edition of the Fatigue Files. So welcome everyone, and today I have with me a dear friend and colleague, Sharon Wirant, who's an amazing coach who works with fatigue. And Sharon, I believe you wrote a fantastic book on the subject, which I'd love you to introduce the audience to as you introduce yourself.
Yes, good morning. So I am Sharon Wirant, and I'm also the best-selling author of Tired Yet Wired, Breaking Your Chronic Fatigue Cycle, which just documents my recovery. It was really fun to write, and it was really, really profound for me, as well as I'm very surprised within my own family. They all loved the book and all walked away with something from it, as well as friends and people who I have not yet met. I am a certified life coach and therapeutic coach. I'm finishing up my certification for level 2 emotional freedom technique, which is a really, really powerful technique to help you process emotions so that you can move forward from those places where you were stuck. And I will say in my book, I write about a session that I had with my own therapist where it just unlocked everything for me. I was really struggling kind of writing and using my own voice. And literally, it was like the cork popped out through this EFT session, and my writing then began to flow. And I found, like this weekend, I was doing a fair bit of writing, and still I was finding that the words were still flowing. So it's a methodology that is quite profound.
So Sharon, do you use EFT with people who are coming to you for coaching around recovery from fatigue?
I do use quite a bit of EFT. Again, it's if they feel that they are ready for it. Sometimes they aren't, and we need to put some other scaffolding in place before they feel that they're at a place to experience tapping.
Sure. Okay. So I'd love to come back to the scaffolding in a minute, but I'm sure there are people listening to this who don't really know what EFT is or how it works. So I'd love you to explain a bit about it, because you brought it up. I know it to be a powerful modality. I know that people get, powerful shifts with it. So I'd love you to explain your understanding of what it is and how it works.
Okay. So throughout our body, we have points called meridians through Chinese medicine. Way back in the day, many years ago, I was a massage therapist, and one of the modalities we learned was how to do shiatsu, and that was working with the meridian system. So here I'm working with the meridian system, which, by the way, is also used in acupuncture, which we know acupuncture is well studied, well known to reduce or to eliminate pain and just free up your energy system. And what we do with tapping is we tap on specific spots on our face and on our upper chest, as well as our hands. And we kind of talk about what you're thinking, what you're feeling, even if it's very minor. I think I'm feeling stressed about. We'll go as basic as that and work our way to maybe being a little bit more detailed as we find perhaps some memories that come up that we can just kind of just lower our physical response to that memory.
So what I'm hearing there is you're associating the energy system release with whatever the issue is. So that the talking is the connection between the issue, and the tapping is what's getting into the energy. And it sounds like you go layer by layer as well. So you might start somewhere and start unraveling it. Correct.
And what people might not realize is that you don't have to be super detailed. Like for me as a practitioner, as we're going through a session, you don't have to talk about all the nitty-gritty details of whatever it was that you experienced. Because as you kind of maybe seeing it at a distance as a movie, we gradually help you from being dissociated from it to gradually being associated, where it's just something that happened to me, and it's a part of my story.
Okay, so it's really taking the charge out of something.
Correct.
So before that, what I'm guessing is there was a memory that might have really plagued someone. So when they had that memory, the body was triggered into certain uncomfortable states. And by using this technique, you're releasing that charge so that then the memory is just something that's there in the autobiography, and people can visit it and they don't get the reaction.
That is correct. And then ultimately, what that's doing is that is regulating the nervous system. And when we have regulation of the nervous system, we get into a healing state where we can heal at the cellular level. I mean, that's really the goal, I think, around recovery of chronic fatigue.
Right. So you get safety in two ways, at least two ways there, don't you? Because you get safety from like the release of the material, but you also get the safety from the fact that you've learned a technique whereby you can safely release material without being re-traumatized by it.
Correct. Yes. And if you read The Body Keeps a Score, Van der Kolk, he really talks about it's not necessary to revisit the trauma in detail, because what we're dealing with is the body's response.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So coming back then to the scaffolding, Sharon, because you started by kind of implying that you wouldn't go straight to EFT. And there are layers, obviously, in approaching the healing process. And it sounds like you've got a fairly clear idea of like how you scaffold in to keep people nice and safe when they start. So I'm just intrigued. What's the scaffolding part? How do you do that with clients?
One, I think it really begins with rapport. The client really needs to feel safe with the practitioner to then begin to feel vulnerable. And then for me to allow the client to kind of, I use the term play around with feeling emotions, because a lot of us have been brought up and within our society that we can't show our emotions. And just by doing lots of little exploration, we kind of find where there might be an area. And then I like to just kind of crawl up on it until it's more like, oh, aha. I see how this I learned, say, from my family, or an event that I had at work, or when I was a kid. I kind of see how that is affecting me. Then we'll kind of go through and see what actually modality might help. And a lot of times it is EFT, but it might be something else that we use to help them to explore more deeper.
So the key here, isn't it, is safety?
Yes.
It's the coming into safety with the self in whatever way you do it. So you start to come into some attuned relationship with the body. Because as you said before, it's the body that keeps the score. It's the body where these things resonate, where they're locked in. And sometimes it's that you get a sensation in a particular part of the body. And when you access that sensation, lo and behold, something comes up that is actually emotional, or is actually historical, or is a memory, or whatever. So that safety piece, you're saying the most important move in that is the establishing of a relationship, a psychodynamic loop between the person and the practitioner, so that the person begins to feel that they can, in your presence, which is a safe, holding, beautiful, calm presence that is non-judgmental, attuned and warm, that in the presence of that kind of gaze and the skill that you have in guiding people through, people can then start to feel safe with themselves.
Right. And when you can feel safe with yourself, again, you come back to more of a healing state that regulate, your nervous system is more regulated. And from there, you find that you rest better. You're not as triggered. Like if something comes up, say with your spouse, something in the past has really would trigger you and put you in a more stressful state, you kind of view it, and say more of from the outside, you kind of step into more of an observer role with a lot of things that happen outside of yourself. And you pay attention, well, how do I feel about this? Where is it in my body? You're more willing to do that.
Which I guess is about creating a response space rather than a reactive pattern that just kicks off automatically.
Yeah. I think it's more powerful when you can recognize a pattern, whether it's within you or, let's say, through a family dynamic, you recognize that pattern, but you don't engage with it.
So how do you teach the people the skills of non-engagement? What strategies do you give them and help them with? Like, what have you found to be the most useful tools in creating that capacity to have that spaciousness in which they can reflect and respond rather than simply react?
Yeah, I think that just goes with putting into practice what we work on in our own sessions. Stepping back into the body, because we tend to be very head-based, cognitive-based, and learning how to just step back into your body and just watch. So how do I do that? Again, it's practice within the session. And when they come back, say something happened in between sessions, we can practice based on whatever the event was.
So when you say practice, would that be, for example, turning to EFT in that moment, taking themselves off and tapping on it secretly in the toilet or wherever they go?
Yeah, I have recommended that. I have recommended that, just kind of grounding yourself by putting your hand over your heart center, noticing your breathing, noticing your feet on the ground. Those are really important tools that you can use while you are, say, in that, you're noticing that pattern or something is beginning to trigger you. Instead of just reacting, you're going to respond by just coming to yourself. And then once you feel that your breath has softened, is longer, not hyperventilating, and you're feeling grounded in the chair, or if you're standing, you just feel that you're solid on the ground, then you can start thinking about what's happening here. How do I want to respond?
So we've talked in a way about, and this whole thing's been around kind of self-soothing, nervous system settling, feeling safe in the body. What are the other layers, Sharon, for you of recovery from fatigue? Because obviously you can be as calm as you like in your body, but you still might have, chemical sensitivity going on, or there might be something in your environment that's affecting your fatigue levels. So to you, how does it all fit together? What's the puzzle here?
The puzzle is for me, what was really powerful was really learning about me, what worked well for me, understanding why I didn't feel like I fit in certain aspects of my former career, and even how my own family kind of played a role and how I grew up. And there's a type of personality or characteristic type of testing that for me I found extremely helpful, and that's called human design. And when I took the human design test, human design is based on chakra, Kabbalah, astrology, and I'm forgetting a couple other pieces. What I really liked about it, that it's not like taking the Myers-Briggs where I have to answer a lot of questions, because I am like 3 different types. If I do the MBI test, I'm a thinker, I'm an overthinker. But when I did the human design, entered my information and what it came back as, and I'm reading about it, I'm like, oh, now I understand. Now I kind of understand things that I had to change. So in the human design world, I am a mental projector, which means, I have 3 centers that are defined, and it's all brain and expressive based. So where I wasn't living I was very quiet, wouldn't speak up, be kind of like, So my book was my first way of expressing myself. Secondly was one of the life coaching certifications that I did was very heavily cognitive based. And I was finding that I got it. I could have that mindset, but my body wasn't responding. And it was because I wasn't connecting with my body. I was feeling everybody else's emotions and feelings and energy. And so once I kind of learned how I might want to live as a mental projector, things totally changed. I allow myself to rest without being hard on myself. I've cut back on a lot. I mean, I used to be super active. Like my husband, I would say he's an Energizer bunny. The man gets up without an alarm clock at 5 a.m. He only needs 5 hours of sleep. And I was trying to live like him. And my body said, nope. And then because of the way I was not living as who I really am, that affected how I conducted myself in some of my roles in my former career. And I see it now, yet I also see how family systemics also plays a role in not just how we interact with people in the world, how it invisibly affects us within groups, not just our family group, but friend groups, work groups. So it's like understanding all of that helped me to realize changes that I could make within myself that also helped to regulate my nervous system. It's like, it's all these little pieces. We think it might be, I just have to do the inner work. Oh, I just need to do the mindset work. Or, oh, I just need to clean up my house and take the medication to get rid of the toxic mold. Well, the thing is you need all of it. You need to look at your body. You need to get physical care for your body if you have an overload of viruses, or you won't get better, even if you put the other pieces into place. We need to look at our mindset and our beliefs and how they're limiting us. We need to look at our emotional well-being. We need to do the inner work, as well as we need to look at our environment, which not just includes our physical space, it includes the social dynamics within our family and work and friendships.
In there's a really interesting, that's fantastic layers. And there's an interesting thread in there that I want to pull a bit with you, which is you were talking about the difference between your energy pattern and the energy pattern of your partner. Now, I imagine that for quite a lot of people listening to this, those with partners, and obviously I understand that there are lots of people who live alone who don't have partners. But for those that do, who've got chronic fatigue, how did you guys negotiate that difference? Because for some couples, that's a big deal. You know, the idea of not going to bed together, not getting up together, not having the same routines, right? And some of us who are like dedicated to, for example, our health optimization science routines might want long fasts overnight. That means we want to eat earlier than normal human beings, in quotes, air quotes, would want to eat and things like that. So how did you negotiate those sort of tensions between the two of you? Was there a period where you had to kind of get used to the fact that you started noticing that you'd been trying to live at his rate, and then you had to step back and say, okay, I'm going to live at my own rate? How did you negotiate that?
I think that I was just simply honest. I was honest with my husband. We have a fantastic relationship. We can talk about just about anything, but it's also how I speak with him. When I realized that I really needed rest, I simply told him, this is what the doctor is finding. So I'm going to start with the illness piece first. So with the illness, I told him, this is what we're finding. These are what all the tests are showing. And my doctor is recommending that I take a 4-hour nap every day. And he was okay with that. And then it was, I kind of want to stay up with him because I want to be with him. But as I said, he gets up at 5 a.m. Yeah, he might go to bed around midnight, but after dinner at about 8 o'clock, he naps. So what I decided to do, because I was making it a bigger deal of him napping, so I decided that when he goes down for a nap, he doesn't get up again until about 10:30 with the second wind. And that pattern works for him. I've decided that's my cue. I can go to bed. And, we kind of joke about it, but I think he kind of understands that I need that extra sleep because one, he has noticed a difference when I get the proper rest. Probably the hardest part was trying to decide how often to do a specific hobby that we do together. So we play in a sport called dog agility. We're quite competitive, and we love to go to the trials because that's where, our main social circles lie. And it was really challenging to say, I'm going to do 1 or 2 trials a month. And this is something that we have done since we've met. So we would literally do a trial, at least in the last 10 years, it's been just about every weekend, which totally wipes me out. And even though I'm feeling better and I have more energy, still, if we did a 3 or 4 weekends in a row, that's too much. But we've come to an easy agreement that, if he decides he wants to go to a trial, he goes, and I'll stay home. It's just really, I guess we've always had that great rapport to be able to talk about our needs.
See, that's really key, isn't it? Being able to honor your needs in that way. I think a lot of people with chronic fatigue syndrome historically find it very difficult to say what they need, or even to feel what they need, or to know what they need. In the first place, one of the key patterns I notice with clients is very often that people have not been able to self-express, and that self-expression comes down to various things. One of which is, "Hello, I have needs too." And it was great that your partner was able to not only acknowledge the need, but also see the payoff for him as well. In relation to you meeting that need, you become more of the kind of partner when you're up and about, where you both enjoy your relationship more deeply than if you kept going on.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really interesting. You mentioned there a 4-hour nap. A 4-hour nap. What did you do? What kind of time in the day was it? And how? Well, let's get 4 hours.
I know. So this was right after I left my former job. I was getting sick like every 2 weeks. I was having flu-like symptoms. And I finally found a physician who was willing to say something other than, you're just that kind of person who's always tired. And what she found was at that point in time was that my Epstein-Barr virus was overloaded. And we were treating reactivated mono. And she said, you really need to rest. And fortunately, I was not working. So I would get up in the morning and I would take care of my dogs. I might read a little bit. And so I would nap late in the morning. And then sometimes I would then nap later in the afternoon.
Wasn't 1 4-hour nap, it was 4 hours of napping.
Yes, I had to. At that time, I was still having difficulty actually sleeping. That's why my book is titled Tired Yet Wired, because I was still very wired and sleep was not easy for me at all. I would wake up every hour and a half. I would fall asleep maybe about 4 in the morning and then, get up at 6 or 7 in the morning. I wasn't having solid sleep at that time. So wherever I could get it, or if I felt tired, I would try to sleep.
So that sounds like quite serious tired yet wired. Awake every hour and a half in the night is really poor sleep. How did you turn your circadian hygiene? How have you turned it around? I'm assuming you have. And how did you turn it around?
I think part of it is obviously my treatment. Also creating that sleep routine and being consistent about it. It is not often that I stay up past 10 at night. And for a long time, I just allowed myself to kind of sleep as long as I could. But then I established I get up at a certain time and I do some basics. And then I would listen to my body. Do I need a nap right now? I think the biggest shift for me in terms of sleeping, and I write about this in my book, I would feel like that wiredness when I was trying to nap. And what I had learned in one of my coaching certifications was just how to be with an emotion, just to notice the sensations in your body. And I would this one in particular, I would just kind of push it aside. And one day I'm like, let's just see, I want to practice this. And I literally felt this really wired sensation that was bright yellow, orange, getting big and then kind of moving. And then after a while, it dissipated and I've not had that sensation again. So in a way, I completed whatever that anxiety was about. I'm assuming it was anxiety or whatever that sensation was. I completed it and allowed it to finish what it needed to do. And actually, after that, I started sleeping better.
That's a really clear example of exactly what you started off talking about in the beginning of our conversation when we're talking about attending to the body, attuning to the body. I mean, that is a really powerful example of the power of tuning into the sensation, allowing it. And obviously you described it as yellow and orange. So there was an imaginative engagement with it as well. You're really befriending it non-cognitively. So you're not left-braining it. You're firmly in right brain territory. You're firmly in metaphorical, symbolic territory, in deep contact with the physiological sensation, allowing it to reveal itself to you without labeling it or necessarily needing to know what it was, even though you said it might have been anxiety. That's, I'm guessing that's a kind of retrospective or a kind of sense of that because you'd felt that sensation buzzing along before. But in that moment, it just dissipated. So it shifted. Yeah. And I'm assuming that what followed it was a state shift.
Yes, because I will tell you that when I was just with that emotion, my stomach was feeling like it was, really clenching. And there was a release to the stomach tension. And I felt that I was much more relaxed I was in the recliner. And so I was in a much more relaxed state. And I believe that I also had a lovely nap afterwards.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, I'm struck time and time again in the kind of work we do, Sharon, by the importance of the body and the intelligence of the body. And frequently I'll find with clients that, we'll be having a conversation and I'll notice that there may be some tension or energy starting to accumulate in a particular part of their body that they may or may not be aware of. And I can invite their attention to it and just say, what's that thing that's going on in your throat right now? And they'll tune into it. And then as they sit with it, maybe they'll cry. Mm-hmm. Maybe something will just happen, but that moment of attunement and then the shift comes. And lo and behold, energetically, they've moved into a completely different space. So I guess if there's anything I really want the audience to hear at the moment from this conversation is the importance of really attuning to your own body, to the incredible, marvelous intelligence that your body has, and to understand the power of non-judgmental, mm-hmm. safe attention, holding presence to self, and specifically to whatever the sensation is that's coming up, how transformative that can be.
Right. And to be aware of the story that you're making about it, because we don't know if that story's right or wrong. The brain just likes to try to interpret things.
It makes a lot up. I was talking to, in fact, this podcast will go out after the one with Ben Ehlers, who I was talking to, and we were talking about the split brain experiments where they cut through the corpus callosum of someone's brain so that neither hemisphere could have any contact with the other hemisphere. And they gave a command to the right hemisphere to raise an arm. So the person put their left arm in the air and then put it down. And then they asked the left brain, why did you raise the arm? And the left brain said, I was waving to my friend. It's complete nonsense.
Yes.
But it has to find an interpretation. It has to produce a narrative. And of course, states pass through the body in seconds if we get out of the way, if we're not having a narrative, if we haven't got a loop running, if we're not holding it in. States pass through very, very quickly. It's quite miraculous, actually, how rapidly we can change.
Exactly. And we can actually observe it in animals. I know they talk about fight or flight with a tiger, but let's put it into a real day context. So let's say you have a cat jumps on the counter, but something's in its way that spooks it, and it goes and jumps off, and then you notice that the cat kind of chills out, might look back at the object, and then saunter away like, oh, that never happened to me. That, I think, is a pretty clear example in the real world with an animal, how, yeah, they do respond, but then they allow themselves to come back down into that calm state. We see it with dogs as well. They might have a tense interaction with another dog, say on a walk, and then they walk away, and you might see both dogs kind of just shake it off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think trauma release exercises are based on this insight, aren't they? There's a practice called TRE.
Yeah.
It's based on that fundamental insight that animals do, indeed, as you say, they shake off the energy and the system returns very quickly to its resting state of baseline flexibility, which of course is a sign of health because we want to be flexible. If we need to go sympathetic because there's a threat, we want to be able to go sympathetic. Equally, we want to be able to come back to a very rested parasympathetic state rapidly as soon as the danger's passed in an appropriate way. And obviously, a lot of problems for humans arise from the fact that we get stuck in this stuff it gets stuck somewhere, either because we believe we believe certain things about it, or we tell ourselves certain stories about it, or because we weren't able to discharge it in the context.
Right.
I think the guy who discovered, who set up TRE was saying he was in a bomb shelter somewhere he was in some conflict zone. I don't know where it was. And what he noticed was children do what animals do. The children were shaking and shuddering, but the grown-ups, the adults, were holding it all in and not allowing themselves to show or experience the fear in the same way, which of course meant that they didn't release it in the same way. It's fascinating.
Yeah. And I think that's because our brains are much more complex than, say, an animal. So that's more innate in the animal. And with us having more complex brain, your example of being in the bomb shelter with the kids, they allowed themselves to just kind of shake. But as an adult, we have been kind of conditioned to certain things. Don't show those emotions. So to me, that kind of shows that our thinking can sometimes get in the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Quite often gets in the way, I've discovered.
Yeah.
I feel
I was trying to be kind.
Yeah, we obviously need that analytical facility, and there are things that the left is really useful for, or we wouldn't have evolved both hemispheres. We've only had one hemisphere if we only needed one. Yes. But to me, living much more right-brained and actually coming from a place of just peripheral expansion where you're just not thinking so much, you're in that more intuitive, more responsive kind of spontaneous place, is often far more productive of well-being than any amount of hours of reflection and all the rest of it. When I'm not dissing reflection, I think sometimes because we have a neocortex and because we are meaning-making creatures and storied beings, we sometimes do need to process things through storying. And that's, I think, where some psychotherapy can be really, really helpful, is actually understanding the narrative structure of what happened. But that can become unhelpful if that's what we get stuck in. So the key, isn't it, is always, is the system shifting? Are we moving the underlying energies and materials in this, or is our approach actually locking them in? Are we creating belief structures and reality tunnels that hold us in unresourceful places? Or are we creating more resourceful reality tunnels? Because we're all making it up anyway. Are we creating more resourceful ones that enable us to live in a much more fluid way that is actually characterized by flexibility and resilience, and the capacity for the nervous system to have its own flexibility, appropriate flexibility? Yeah,
Absolutely. I will tell you now, my journey has been about, more than, I'd say my worst was about 7 years ago. And I kind of, I'm reflecting back. I have so much more inner peace. Once something goes awry, it's not as stressful. It's stressful, but there's not that sense. I remember that sense in my chest of like urgency, and my heart pound and my heart rate just really high, really was not there.
Exactly. I think there are two things there, aren't there? One is that sense of resetting the system or resettling the system in a way that means the baseline changes, the stress threshold moves. What used to trigger and stress us no longer does so, because we've got a different stress threshold. So that's one thing. It's more equanimity, more expansive calm, and so we're less easily triggered. And the other side of it is, when we are triggered, there's the capacity to be neurologically flexible and come out of the triggered state much, much more rapidly, indeed very rapidly with practice. You can state shift in seconds if you know what you're doing. And so it is really, at the end of the day, there's an invitation in all of this to become, I guess, expert in managing bodily states, state management. I mean, all these things are driven by states. They're so critical to all of this, right?
Yes.
And I was listening to, I've forgotten her surname, Dr. Amy someone this morning, talking about trauma. And she was talking about the biological layer. And she was saying how you do the somatic safety stuff And then after that, there's a layer where you actually do need to attend to all the basic biological foundations of health, because the body has to be in a certain state in order to handle certain energies, which I think comes back to what you were saying about it all needs to come into the picture. It has to be integrated. It has to be an integrated approach. We're running out of time, but I'm wondering if there's anything you'd like to say on that side, the more physiological side of what you do with clients, and how you see, Sharon, that the biological layers playing into all of this.
That's a great question. I tend to try to hit, all those different areas with my questioning, where my clients are at. So let's say they are seeing a physician. Every week we talk about how they're feeling, what they might think or sense might need to change. We look at their emotional state. What's happening for you right now? What's coming up for you right now? And I try to hit all those different layers to see where we might need to create a shift or unblock a block.
Yeah, so I was thinking more on like diet.
Oh, diet, yes.
In hygiene, water purification, heat stress, those sort of things.
Yes. Those are all important. I think sometimes, as we notice, I kind of forgot about that bit. But yes, we have to talk about and look at the foods that we are eating. In my book, I talk about mindful eating, that when you eat, slow down, really taste and really chew your food, and then notice it as it travels from your mouth down to your stomach. Sometimes you'll notice foods that just don't make you feel well. For me, that's eggs. When I have an egg, I have that kind of reaction. But if I eat like a dark greens, I love dark greens because for my body, it feels very cooling. So foods are really, really important. I know here in the US, we have a lot of ultra processed foods. So they are chemically engineered to give you a dopamine jump start. And so because they have very little nutritional value, but yet they have a high dopamine value, we keep eating them. And we see a lot of obesity in this country. We see a lot of chronic illness in this country. So really being mindful of what you're putting into your body, creating, around food, I kind of meal plan for the whole week, and then I put our meals together. And for me, I might have leftover dinner for breakfast. I've moved away from what people might say is traditional breakfast food, like your eggs, like your oatmeal. I kind of pay attention to what my body wants. Sleep, I have a sleep routine. I have a morning routine. I go to bed at the same time. I start to turn lights down as soon as it starts getting dark out. I switch from screens to actually reading a book. I always read a book before I go to bed. I might do some stretching. So I have a routine for going to bed. I have a routine getting up in the morning. Mine is a little loud when I get up. I have dogs barking because they really want their breakfast. I feed them. And then we sit down and have a cup of tea. And then because I have some medications I have to take without food, I take those. I kind of I'll read a book, or maybe I'll catch up on the news, and then I'll have breakfast and then get ready for the day. I always include movement in my day. I always include, I use a vibration plate with my movement. I also indulge in an infrared sauna. So I try to do things that keep my cells moving within my body. And I also drink a lot of water to keep myself hydrated so that my cells can continue moving and my organs continue being supported and working properly. And we do have to watch our water source for sure. I drink filtered water, even though we have a well that we have checked periodically to make sure we're not having like PFAS, which is, I think, invading a lot of water sources. It's being mindful of what I'm putting in my body.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, the biological layer here is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing with clients, you presumably have like a checklist or something that you go through with them to make sure they're getting all the basics in. Because, I mean, these things are obviously fundamental to human well-being, and those of us with fatigue conditions really need to pay attention to the foundations of human well-being. There are lots of layers there, Sharon. We were talking about the EFT and those techniques, getting in touch with attuning to like the body's somatic holding of material, attuning to the emotions, checking out what's going on emotionally and looking at all the physical layers there. Loads in that picture. So a sort of very rich, multi-dimensional approach. Yes.
Yeah, we have to look at it all. It all plays together nicely or not nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sharon. I'm really grateful to you for your time, and I know the audience will be too.
Thank you for the invitation.